Hopefully, this one will be pretty quick. And I'm not even using any article, just literally just a spontaneous video to talk about these issues. Um, Keir Starmer's often been kind of mockingly called two-tier Keir regarding the alleged double standards of the police, and that then reflects on the government. I don't think it's entirely without basis. I think there is a legitimate grievance out there that the police are not consistent in their policing, particularly when we consider that the Home Secretary has called for even more intense usage of non crime hate incidents. And she says this is necessary to record tensions in communities. That may be true, but it's bad optics. It makes it look like she's pushing the police to be more bureaucratic rather than actually tackle crime. Um, and they made a big thing about being tough on crime. But it's a mixed record. I'm pleased the Labour Party and pleased the government took a hard line on the violent rioters from this summer, and I have zero sympathy for those people. There was a mother and daughter jailed today for attacking a car. Now, jumping on top of it and attacking a stranger's car, I don't see in what capacity that is a legitimate way to protest against immigration. It's just nonsensical. So I have no sympathy for mindless jobs. I just don't. Um, However, if we look at other such cases, I mean, the Huw Edwards thing, I think, is a disgrace because the optics of that are you have an establishment figure, Huw Edwards, getting a pretty lenient sentence, suspended sentence, 7 years of being on the sex offenders register, and I think it's 40 days of mandatory training in sexual offences. It's watered down. It's really not, considering what he was viewing, considering it was extensive, considering his knowing contact with a predator. I think that was a pretty lenient sentence. And the judge claims his reputation's in tatters. Well, of course it is. Maybe the judge's logic was, well, that's punishment enough. But um, you have to wonder if it was an ordinary person, would it be a tougher sentence? I do think there is establishment elitism in this country now. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to say it's kind of orchestrated, but I do think a lot of our judiciary, I think a lot of the legal establishment live in a bubble. I've said this time and time again because this judge, can he not understand the optics of public anger that will come about from that, or maybe he just doesn't care. He claims, well, he concedes that it's a terrible crime, and yet he gives Edwards a tap on the wrist, effectively speaking. Um, Davies at the BBC, the Director General, has said he doesn't see it happening regarding Edwards getting a job again. Well, that's an understatement. I mean, I just think there's this mentality that the powerful get protected. Um, Not mentality, but there's a perception. Look at the Muhammad Al Fayed allegations. I mean, I think people will look at these sort of things and think and feel that they're sick and tired of seeing powerful people committing offences and effectively getting away with it. Um, and the rioters getting jailed. Now, I've no sympathy for with them. I think they should be jailed, but people will look at that. Um, Another example is when it comes to eco extremists. I mean, the Greenpeace group that targeted Rishi Sunak's house, um, they put the big black drape over his private residence in Richmond, his constituency. That case has just been thrown out. It's been completely thrown out because the judge claimed there's insufficient evidence. I mean, that's just delusional. They filmed themselves. The evidence was there. And the charge apparently was vandalism because or criminal damage because some of the tiles had been damaged. It doesn't matter that Rishi Sunak's young family were not there. Apparently, they were in California at the time. That's irrelevant. They could have been there. And that would be scary for young children to see strangers target your house because your dad's the Prime Minister. I mean, I think that was an utterly obnoxious stunt, even by Greenpeace standards. Um, so why did the judge throw it out? I see no difference between them and the rioters over the summer. I mean, in both cases, it's criminal criminal behaviour. And technically, the rioters may have been more violent, but I do think there's this idea that if you get a working class rioter, they're going to get a tougher sentence than a middle class green activist. Um, I say anyone who breaks the law should be treated um, proportionately, and I'm not sure that that's the case. So in both those cases, the Huw Edwards thing and the Greenpeace thing, I think there was overt leniency. Um, I mean, the Greenpeace ruling is effectively giving the green light, no pun intended, to every eco-zealot out there who thinks they could do whatever they like. And of course they welcomed the verdict, but they claimed arrogantly they shouldn't have been there in the first place. They're effectively saying we can break the law, and that's okay. We can trespass onto someone's property, we can commit criminal damage, and it's fine. I mean, the arrogance of these people is utterly staggering. With the rioters, there was a lot of excuses, and some of them claimed to have remorse, others claimed that they were drunk. With green activists, they've zero remorse, and they actually boast about what they do. These people are infuriating. I mean, I'm not a Tory, I didn't support Rishi Sunak's government, but in the end of the day, that was his private residence. For them to target that in a period where MPs have been violently attacked, I think that was definitely crossing a line. Um, I'm sick of green extremists thinking that they just hide behind protest and that makes it okay what they do. Um, just one last thing. In the last video, I negated to mention on the theme of protesters, there was a guy interrupted Rachel Reeves. The Chancellor was speaking in Liverpool, and yeah, he was heckling her about Israel and Hamas and arming Israel. Um, and it's just something you notice about protesters, the extreme confidence they have. I'm not saying I agree with him, but you can't deny it takes a bit of pluck to kind of speak your mind and know that you're going to get jeered. And I mean, like I said, I'd be a hypocrite if I was to support him when I've been so vocally against green zealots doing the same thing. But I'm not overly impressed by Rachel Reeves, I have to say. I don't like her U-turn when she was berating the Tories for executive bonuses, and then she's saying she's going to be pro-growth, and she's basically went back on that. So I'm not overly impressed by her. Also, the Labour Party, the kind of collective clapping, it looked a little bit, I don't know, I don't think it's good optics, like the collective clapping after the heckler was moved. And she said, we're not a party of protest, that's good. I think they're right not to associate themselves with green cults like Just Stop Oil, but it can also look a little bit establishment and arrogant. So I don't know. Um, but I do think we have a problem in this country where there is a perception, and I'm sure judges will claim this isn't the case, but there is a perception that the rich and the powerful get protected and middle class people get protected, quite frankly. I mean, why is it a middle class green criminal gets a lighter sentence than a working class nationalist rioter? I suppose every case needs to be looked at its own merit, but um, I do think there is some level of two-tier system at play here. That doesn't mean I have any sympathy for rioters. I'm not GB News. These people deserve to be in prison. They've done some awful things. But I would argue that when green activists put lives at risk, I mean, I notice that Greenpeace is going out of their way to whine about the fact that Shell is suing them. Well, when they get onto an oil platform, they're not only putting themselves at risk, they're putting any potential rescuers at risk. Oil platforms are dangerous places. So I have no respect for Greenpeace's tactics, whatever their purported goals are. Doesn't mean I have any affinity for a group like Shell, a big energy company. This is the irony. They just don't get it. This is a thing you notice with green groups. They're utterly incapable of introspection. They're utterly incapable of seeing that they don't get wider public support because people look at their infantile tactics and they don't support it. Anyway, I know I've talked about a number of different subjects here, but I do think there is an elitism in this country. I do think that there is a perception that there's a classism and there is a kind of protection of the rich and powerful. Um, Having said that, I accept that that's not an entirely consistent thing because when the Tories were in power, they were going out of their way to defend Johnson Sleaze, and basically they took the attitude that it's one rule for them and another for everyone else. That's why I wanted to see the Tories defeated in July, and I'm pleased they were defeated. They deserve to be defeated. But Labour cannot be complacent, when it comes to Sleaze either, especially when Starmer's made such a big thing about being Mr. Rules. Some of the recent stuff over his wife's dress and donations and so on. I think it's relatively minor compared to what the Tories done, but the charge of hypocrisy is one of the most damaging charges I think you can get in politics. Anyway, that's my thoughts.